Hey everyone, welcome to Plant-Based Cooking with John, your go-to channel for delicious plant-based recipes that won't break the bank. Whether you're a seasoned cook or just starting out, you'll find easy to follow recipes that use simple ingredients and basic kitchen equipment. On today's episode, I'm going to be showing you how to make tofu bacon. It has few ingredients, it's easy to do, bacon is very versatile, you can eat it by itself, you can make BLTs, you can have it with your breakfast. So let's check it out. Now first, let's take a moment to talk about the ingredients that we're going to be using for this recipe. The first ingredient is tofu. Okay, this was a 14-ounce tofu. You can buy this at almost any supermarket. I got this one particularly at Target with their Good and Gather organic tofu. And the only thing for the bacon that you want to make sure when you get the tofu is that it's extra firm, or at least firm. You know, there's going to be different levels, so just make sure that it's firm. The second ingredient that we're going to be using is soy sauce. Now, soy sauce, of course, just like tofu, is relatively inexpensive, and you might even already have it in your fridge. The next ingredient that we're going to use is olive oil. This is what we're going to be using to cook. Now, you can use other oils if you like. I prefer olive oil just because it's a little better for you, and I understand that it might be a little bit more expensive, but of course, something like this and something like soy sauce, you can use it time and time again. So you're not going to be using a lot at a time each time you make the recipes. The next item is maple syrup. Now, obviously you want to be very careful when you're at the store not to get pancake syrup, which is usually just sugar water. I like to get the real stuff. This is organic maple syrup. Now, this is a little bit more expensive, but once again, as I mentioned with the other products, you can use it time and time again and not use a lot of it at a time. Similar to that would be nutritional yeast. Now, out of all the ingredients I'm presenting to you today, this one's probably the most expensive depending on where you live. Nutritional yeast, however, goes into a lot of plant-based recipes. And once again, just like the soy sauce, you can use it over and over again. So even if you pay a little bit more now, it's going to be worth your money in the long run, because especially on this channel, we're going to be using nutritional yeast quite a bit. And there's really good health benefits if you're a plant-based eater. It gives you vitamin B12. So a lot of B12 vitamins will come from actual meats. So this is a good way to give you your nutritional value of B12. And it's really good. You can eat it raw. It's kind of has a cheesy kind of taste to it. And we're going to be using this. And then the last item, and this one is optional, but I really think it kind of turns up the notch when it comes to getting that bacon flavor that we all love, and that is liquid smoke. Now, some people don't like it, some people feel like it's overwhelming. We won't be using a lot of it, but it really, like I said, it just gives that little extra bacon flavor, that smoky taste that you come to love bacon for. So we're only going to be using probably like a half teaspoon here of the liquid smoke, but I would highly recommend it. For a review, I'm going to now list all the ingredients that I just mentioned on the screen now. Feel free to pause the video if you want to write them down so you can gather everything you need, or pause the video in case you just want to follow along with me. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to want to drain and then press the tofu. Now, there is special equipment like a tofu press that you can use to extract the water out of the tofu, but you don't need all that stuff. I'm just going to show you a simple way to do it here, okay? So first you want to open the package. Now, I've tried peeling this before and it just explodes everywhere, so I think it's best just to use a knife, and you're just going to basically cut a slit right here on the top, and then you can just peel it down. Okay, so I'm letting the water drain. and then here's my block of tofu, okay? Now, what I like to do before I start to press it is I just like to give it a quick rinse. So let me just do that super quick. All right, very good. Now, before I press it, just so there's more surface area to be covered, I'm going to go ahead and start cutting the bacon strips right now and press it afterward. Okay, now when it comes to cutting the tofu, here is the block. I'm putting it long ways on the cutting board, and now I'm just going to take a knife. The thinner you cut the tofu, the more crispy it's going to be, just because it's going to have less to cook through in the pan. So what I like to do, I don't mind it being a little thicker. I don't mind the bacon. You know how you have some bacon that's a little chewier. So what I do is just cut right about there, about a thin strip like this, just to show you, and a little broke off. That's okay. You can still cook with it. So you can see the you can see the thinness of the tofu there, okay? And you're just going to keep going until all of the pieces are cut. Another little trick I like to do, because sometimes I have the tendency to cut at an angle, so what you can do is flip the tofu as you're cutting it, so you make sure that it gets even. So every like 3 cuts or so, I like to just flip it to just try to keep it even as possible. And because it's firm, you don't really have to worry about it sticking together too much, whereas softer tofu is going to have more of a congealing effect. So you can just throw the tofu right there on the cutting board. All right, now it's time to press the tofu. Like I said, you could use a tofu press if you want. I'm basically just going to be using a towel, just a normal kitchen towel, and I'm going to lay it out flat so that I can get as much surface area dried as I can. And that is why I cut the tofu first. By cutting the tofu first, you're not just pressing a block down, you're pressing a larger surface area so that the tofu dries faster. So let me show you how that's done. All right, I have my towel laid out now, and I'm just going to take each piece and I'm just going to line them up. You can go right to the edge of the towel, and I'm just going to line these up as close as possible. Now that I have the tofu laid out, this is what it looks like. Now you'll notice like right around here, I had to overlap some of the pieces, but as I mentioned, because it's firm, it's not going to make it's not going to make much of a difference if some of the pieces are covered, because we're just trying to get all the water out of the tofu. So what I'm going to do is just simply cover this. Okay, and this is what I meant about the tofu press. So instead of doing a tofu press, I'm just going to take my cutting board. Okay, so I just rinsed the cutting board here, and I'm just going to place this right on top of the towel. Okay, so now it's this. Now this isn't a lot of weight to press it down, so you can grab anything that might be you know, heavier in weight. So I'm just going to use some cast iron skillets that I have. So now I've placed the cast iron skillets on top of the cutting board, which is on top of the tofu. Now there are some sides here that I didn't quite get. You can redistribute the weight as you're pressing it as you go. And I would say that this needs just about 30 minutes or so to dry, and this is something to keep in mind if you do this in the future. You might want to do this step ahead of time, because the longer it dries, the better it's going to be. All right, the tofu's been pressed for 30 minutes, so now we're ready to start cooking. Let's check it out. All right, now it's time to go ahead and start cooking the bacon, or the tofu. The first thing, just to let you know as far as equipment goes, you want to pull the tofu close to your cooking area. I'm just using a non-stick pan. You can use almost any kind of skillet or shallower vessel than this. Because what's going to happen is when the tofu is sitting on the oil, it almost has like a floating effect. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn on the heat. So now we have some heat going here, and I'm putting it on a higher temperature because we're going to be frying it. All right, so now we're going to take the olive oil, and what I'm going to do is just put enough. You don't have to do it like a deep fat fryer. I'm just doing enough where it's about a 1/4 of an inch layer that hits the bottom of the pan, as you can see here, okay? And I just swish it around just a little bit, let the oil heat up just for a moment, and then as soon as that's done, we can start placing the tofu pieces in one by one. So I'm going to go ahead and start doing that now. What I do in this pan, and it's going to vary depending on what kind of vessel you use to cook this with, I'm just going to do about 6 at a time, and you can see how I line these up as I place them in the pan. Okay, the tofu is really starting to sizzle now. You can hear it. If it's not too hot, another thing I like to do is just kind of swish it a little bit, making sure that the oil covers the top of the pieces too. That way it's getting fully cooked in as you're doing it. And then just to have something nearby, I like to just have a little plate to use, and then I have these little sets of tongs. You can use regular tongs if you want, or you can even use a fork to flip them. You can flip them, I would say about 3 or 4 minutes after they're starting to cook through the when you first lay them down. So now I'm going to go ahead and flip them over, and you'll notice that they're starting to get a little brown. One thing while you're cooking, you're going to notice that usually the edges start getting crispier first, and you can flip these basically as many times as you want. Each piece is going to be a little different, so you just want to make sure that you want to get as much golden brown texture as you can. Some of the pieces will cook faster than others depending on how thick you cut them. You know, I try to make them as consistent as possible, but hey, I'm only human. But you can kind of see, like, here's a really good example here. I'm just gonna show a little close up. So as you can see, it's pretty crispy. You can hear it, how crispy it is, and you can see the brownness on both sides. So I'm going to take that one out right now. Some of my other ones, like this one, I would say is ready. And what's kind of neat about tofu, it's kind of similar to bacon, is sometimes you'll have like pockets where it's a little softer, like this one for example. But then it kind of resembles bacon because, you know, you have those fattier pieces that you would have with bacon. But guess what, guys? It's not fat. It's just tofu. So I have a couple other crispy ones I'm going to go ahead and take out now. Actually, they're all about ready, I would say. Yep, they're all pretty golden brown and crispy and ready to go. Okay. Now that I've removed those 6 pieces, like I said, I like to cook them consistently. So then I'm just going to lay my next 6 pieces down. Okay, the cooking is wrapping up here. I just have all these like tinier pieces, or the ones that broke. Like I said, we won't waste those particular pieces because they'll still be flavored and good. So now this is all done, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the heat, which I just did. And now I have all of my cooked tofu here. Okay, and now we'll proceed on to the next step. All right, now it's time to get some flavor onto this bacon. What I like to do, so you don't wait or use up more of the olive oil, once the pan is cool enough, just take a paper towel and, you know, look how far my fingers are from actually touching the surface. I'm not burning my hand, right? What I'm going to do here is just kind of wipe out some of the excess oil, but I still want enough here to be able to cook with, okay? So I'm just removing some of that excess. So you basically just have just a little that you're working with in the pan. So this is a very shallow amount of oil now that I'm going to be using. All right, now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to put the tofu back into the pan, okay? And now what I'm going to do, and they can be a little stacked, it's okay. I'm basically separating it as much as I can. So that way a lot of the ingredients that I put in will hit each of the pieces, okay? But as you can see, it's a little layered in some areas. Just try to spread it as much as you can. First thing you're going to do is you're just going to use your soy sauce, and you're going to pour it on to the pan. And what I'm doing here is I'm just making sure that all the pieces are covered. Now, I like my bacon salty. One of the characteristics of bacon is salt. So I like to go a pretty good amount of that. That's going to be the ingredient I use the most of, because one of the properties of bacon is just the salt factor. The next thing I'm going to use is the maple syrup. Now the maple syrup, I'm just going to do just enough to cover the pieces, not too much. And you can also use less of the maple syrup if it's really not something, if you don't want it to be as sweet. But another good thing about the maple syrup is that it congeals to the pieces, which will hold in the flavor of the other ingredients too. Now the next thing I'm going to use is the liquid smoke, and as I had mentioned before, I'm just going to use a half teaspoon of the liquid smoke, because you don't need a lot. A little bit goes a long way, and I'm just pouring that into everything as well. The last ingredient that you're going to use is the nutritional yeast, and what I like to do here is I just like to make sure, once again, that all the pieces are coated, and like the maple syrup, this will kind of pull all the ingredients together. So a pretty generous amount, just to make sure that all the pieces are covered, just like so, okay? So just to give you kind of a closer look, you have all of the ingredients in here and the sauce kind of floating around. Now before I even turn on the heat, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that all the ingredients get really good and mixed in there. I'm just using the same pair of tongs. Then you can turn on the heat again, but you're only going to turn it on into a low temperature, okay? That's pretty brown all the way around. It has a lot of good marinade. I'm taking that out. Same with this one. There you have it. So then you have your bacon, okay? Now, as I mentioned before, the bacon itself is good enough on its own. You can actually just take up a piece and eat it. It's delicious. You can probably hear the crunch. But oh my gosh, these are so good. In fact, I'm going to put this on a little BLT, and I'll show you how that looks here in just a second. Alright, now that my bacon's done, it's right here, it's looking great. I'm just going to make myself a little BLT. All right, and now for storage of the bacon. I would say that the bacon will last, about 3 to 5 days. Just put, one layer into the Ziploc bag, and then what I like to do is just take a paper towel, put that on top, and then put your other layer on there, and just okay, now I have my bacon and my lettuce and tomato on the other side. I can then just flip this over.
And now I have your classic BLT. Look how great that looks.
I hope you enjoyed this video. Please hit the notification bell, subscribe to be updated on recipes that I'll be coming out with in the later weeks. And I'll see you next time. Thank you for tuning in.